Newsflash of the day. Every one of us are going to suffer in this life. How's that for a sermon opener? I bet you're excited for the rest now. Suffering is a reality, though, and while there aren't real adequate answers to the question of why we suffer, I do hope we can explore how we respond to it, because we'll all need to sooner or later. We all suffer. We cause suffering. We deal with suffering. I believe faith does give us a response to suffering. We battle suffering. We face suffering with compassion, courage, and good cheer. Oh, we also face it with heartbreak and rage and gut-wrenching sorrow, but we don't stay there. We battle it because God is with us and for us, and the love of God is trustworthy. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Jesus told the story. You till the soil, you plant the seed, you water, and you wait. Eventually, there will be a harvest. Like all of Jesus' stories, this is about the kingdom of heaven or God's promised day. The promise here is that in time, God will make everything right that has gone wrong. It's kind of like Quantum Leap with Dr. Samuel Beckett going back to fix what once went wrong. Anybody watch the old Quantum Leap? That was a great show. Sidebar, but it was a good show. In time, God will heal all that is broken and bruised. All that is good and beautiful and holy will be gathered up, none of it lost. Love is a tender power. It's a vulnerable strength. But the promise of the gospel is that love will always win. That's good news. Love ultimately and always wins. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. articulated this promise. He often said the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. That's the promise of this parable. The world is beautiful, but it's also broken. Much that is broken in us and in all is beyond our capacity to repair. We have to accept that we can't fix everything. It sounds hopeless. But this beautiful and broken world is loved by God, and in God's promised day, all that has gone wrong, God will make right. Love is a tender power. It's a vulnerable strength, but love will win. But before we get there, we live through the season of weeds in the garden. We know this truth. Nothing is pure. None of us is pure. No deed, no motive, no choice, no relationship. That's what John Calvin meant by total depravity, though I think he could have come up with a better name. Nothing we do is perfect or blameless. We have the propensity to mess things up, even the things we care the most about. There are always weeds in the wheat. When we recognize this truth, our first reaction is to fix it, because we have the false hope and belief that everything is fixable. My mom tells the story of her dad, my granddad, her confidence that he could fix anything. He was an incredibly clever engineer, could design and fix most things, but not everything. My mom learned this one day when her balloon popped and she laid it on his workbench for him to fix. You can't fix a popped rubber balloon. Our first reaction is to fix it. It's our instinct. We can fix it. We're going to be okay. We think we should. We think we can. Master, do you want us to weed the garden? We can pull the weeds from the ground. Just rip out all the bad. Do you want us to make everything right? Should we just fix it? Surprisingly, Jesus says, no. You will do more harm than good. I say surprisingly because Jesus often says, go and do the good that is yours to do. Love your neighbor, turn the other cheek, forgive 70 times, 7 times. Discipleship is an active lifestyle. It involves a lot of doing. But here Jesus says, no, leave it to God, because you will do more harm than good. Sometimes that's the truth. but it's hard to accept. I've learned that the hard way many times over my life. I was working as a chaplain in the hospital when a man came in through the ER. I visited him and heard all the troubles he was having, and I wanted to fix it for this man. I tried to make phone calls, get things straightened out, until one of the social workers told me that I was doing more harm than good. I was enabling him, that he often came to the hospital for quick fixes, for someone else to solve all his problems, and the hospital can't be that for him. He has to learn how to solve the problems and take action for himself. But I was a chaplain. My job was to heal and to fix things. Or so I thought. Leave those weeds alone. Some things we just can't fix. There's a prayer attributed to Reinhold Niebuhr, which has been part of many 12-step programs, that speaks of the wisdom of this parable. Perhaps you know it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There's wisdom there. But there's also a danger in this parable. This word should never be used to justify problems we can fix. To be able to say, you know what? It's probably just do more harm than good. Might as well not even try to solve that. Might as well not even try to help this person. Recently, a woman came by the church in need of help. We took her over to Love Inc. and heard some of her story and figured out, okay, we can kind of give her some temporary housing for a month, help her get back on her feet, find a way to get her ID cards, get a job, and we did all of this. And we tried to kind of help get her some medical care, get her to appointments. But over time, she wasn't able to follow through. She backed out of appointments, ways to help, and eventually went on her way again. Now we could say, you know what, we shouldn't have even helped. We shouldn't have even tried, because some people just can't be fixed. That's what the danger of this parable is, that, you know what, we shouldn't even try. But we also are to do the good we can do, try our best, and sometimes things can work out and help. And sometimes they don't. But it doesn't mean we never try. Sometimes there is good we can do. As a chaplain that same summer, I had to learn that sometimes people tried to suck me into their problems, to take advantage of me, to manipulate me, to not have to take responsibility for themselves. It was easy just to think that was always the case. Wash my hands of every situation, go into it thinking you're out for something. Sometimes we feel that way, right, when we see somebody with a cardboard sign. Sometimes our first instinct is, what's their game? What's their scam? It's easy to have our hearts hardened. But there was a woman in the ER one day with a broken wrist. I was making rounds and saw her, and she seemed worried and distressed and anxious. I sat with her and asked what brought her in today. She told a story of how she hurt her wrist, but I could tell it wasn't the truth. Eventually, we got to the truth that her boyfriend had hurt her. It'd be easy to let her handle it herself, say, well, that's your problem, and deal with it. But she didn't know what to do. Now, I can't say I fixed her situation, but I knew there was good I did need to do. I had to get her with a social worker, give her the option of talking to the police, help her figure out a safe place to stay for the night if she needed one. Some things we can fix, and some things we can't. And some things we can only fix the parts we can fix, or at least help repair. There's always repair work that needs to be done. The rest of that prayer, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's the hardest part, though. It's sometimes tough to know the difference. Sometimes we feel so small and helpless in the midst of injustice, in the midst of what we know is not right in this world, but that doesn't mean we give up and say things cannot change. Remember, we are made to be in community with each other. We're designed to do this together. We find others, we work as a community. There are millions who suffer with homelessness in Harrisburg and around the country and around the world. Now, we can't solve that problem entirely. Some people are in that situation by choice, or by a pattern of choices that we cannot fix, or because of a system that doesn't work for them. But we can help repair that problem for many, but not on our own. We work for solutions with the community. It's why we worked with the Veterans Outreach of America to sponsor a tiny home for homeless veterans as part of a larger tiny home community. Homelessness is a large problem. We can't solve it all, but we are called to do what we can, to do the good that we can do. The Bible's pretty clear on that. We are to work for justice, to help the poor and needy. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. Even hard things can be made right. But sometimes the most faithful thing to do is to trust God will make right that which we can't. Have you ever come up to a problem that you can't just fix on your own? It makes you feel helpless. Sometimes even worthless. Why can't I solve this? Why can't I fix this for myself, for my loved one? And that's why this parable gives us strength. It says, sometimes you aren't supposed to fix it. Sometimes you have to wait and let God be God. We can't fix death. It's heartbreaking to lose a child, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend. We cannot fix death. I once heard a pastor share a message after the recent death of his child. He said, "I will forever carry the scars of grief in my heart. But I want you to know that resurrection is not just for those who have died. Somehow God brings new life even to those who hurt so badly. Our greatest fear is that we will never die. I've been to hell, but bit by bit, heartbeat by heartbeat, God is resurrecting me. I am alive again." This is the promise of the parable. God is trustworthy. Sometimes there are things that we cannot fix. There are wrongs that we cannot make right. There are injuries we cannot mend. Jesus says, leave it to God. For in time, God will sort the weeds from the wheat, and all will be well. As we sing, through many dangers, toils, and snares that have already come, 'tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will bring me home. Suffering has probably already come to you. If not, it will. It is not something I can explain, but I do think God empowers us to battle suffering with courage and good cheer. And when there are things we cannot make right, leave that to God, who will be faithful. There is a promised day toward which we are living. It's a day when justice will roll down like water. It's a day when swords will be beaten into plowshares. It's a day when our burdens will be laid down and our griefs will be healed. It's a day when the hungry will be fed and all people will know dignity. And the children will grow up neither to be the destroyers nor the destroyed. In time, God will redeem all that has gone wrong, and all will be well, and all manner of things shall be made well. Love is a tender power. It's a vulnerable strength, but love will win. That's the meaning of the parable. That's the message of this table. It seems like a small thing, a small table, a little bit of juice, a bite of bread, but it's so much more. It reminds us that ultimately death has been defeated, that God loves us too much to let death take us away from God, that nothing in all creation can separate us from the love of God, that the promised day of God is coming when all people from east and west, north and south shall gather at the table together and eat and be as one. And that is God's promised day. There are reminders, and there's hope. We can't fix the world today. We can't fix all the problems. But there is good we can do. And what we cannot fix, we will let God be God. And we will come to this table together and remember God's promised day is coming. And ultimately, love wins and has won. So come to this table and remember, all shall be well.